Major General Jeffrey Schloesser, U.S. Army, retired former commanding general of the 101st Airborne Division, and author of Marathon War, Leadership in Combat, Afghanistan. Major General, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Mike, and thanks for having me on the show.
An honor to talk to you. What is wargaming? Who's at the table? What type of things are you guys considering as you wargame things out?
Yeah, so there's three levels of wargaming, and the most basic one is where soldiers and troops, airmen, Navy, sailors actually fight against aggressors. No one gets killed, but you're able to actually have the troops go through all the sequences of a battle. In between that, divisions do with their staff, and the division is about 20,000 soldiers, and they go through something very similar. The ones that I think right now most people are interested in are the strategic war games, where we actually pit a country against or a group of allies against others. You know, Mike, it's fascinating to go back. In 1934, we had blue versus orange. Orange was Japan, blue was the U.S. in a war game, and we lost terribly. And the only way that we got the Navy fleet and the Air Forces that we did, and the Army we did for World War II, was because of that war game.
Wow. When was that? When did we do that war game?
1934, if you can believe that, yeah. 7 years before Pearl Harbor. And it was the exact, it was almost a play sheet. I mean, Admiral Nimitz eventually wrote in his book that without that war game, we may have lost World War II.
Unbelievable. What kind of war games have been done recently / are being done now?
Yeah, absolutely. The one that is most critical is there's this continually, and it's almost a continual reassessment of the strength of NATO against Russia and potentially a few of its allies, such as Belarus. You're actually seeing that occurring in a variety of different ways. Obviously, the component command over there, which is EUCOM, European Command, and it also has a Supreme Allied Command, so it's also a NATO command. They're constantly evaluating what is the situation, what happens if Putin, in fact, does go to tactical nuclear weapons, and then what would be our response. At the end of the day, for all our viewers, all wargaming is just trying to visualize on the battlefield what your courses of action are based upon the what-ifs that the enemy can do, and then actually working through big, better responses than what we may have been planning.
How many levels do you go, right? So let's say, and I maybe would like to do this, but Putin does a tactical nuclear weapon, and we can define what tactical nuclear even means, right? So he does one, we respond. Do we then do his response, and then our response, and then his response? Like, how far do you go down that road?
Yeah, Mike, the great question. Think of it as a Monte Carlo simulation where there are literally thousands of courses of action that go through that. For an example, I don't want our viewers to think, even if Putin was crazy enough to go with a tactical nuclear weapon as a means to escalate, to de-escalate, our response doesn't need to be tactical nuclear weapons in return. It could be a conventional response that is completely devastating to Putin, and his country, unfortunately.
And then do you say, okay, so we knock out whatever, some of his military installations. Then do you think about, well, what is his response?
It could be, yeah. But then, of course, there's always these other options that are exciting now because we have this thing called multi-domain warfare. So we cannot think just this isn't tanks, helicopters, missiles, and tactical nuclear weapons. There are a lot of options out there. Think of space and cyber for two exciting options. So for an example, what if there is no electrical power in Russia at all, ever, for 2 or 3 weeks? That limits Putin's responses and his capabilities in some cases. There are very unusual things that can be done in modern day warfare. You're not seeing it play there in Ukraine so much, but the possibilities are not endless, but they're pretty surprising, I think, for most viewers.
Wow. Okay. Who's at the table considering all these things, right? Is it just military people, or are you bringing some other people in as well?
No, in fact, the best war games, the ones that are actually done not in a crisis, but before a crisis, actually, they simulate they have a president, they have like an ambassador or a State Department official acting as the president. You have State Department people acting as the Secretary of State. You have civilians with a military bent or national security bent that are playing the Secretary of Defense. And then you have a whole variety of other folks that are playing. You actually have an audience out there because information warfare now is critical. I mean, Putin's trying hard, but I think President Zelensky's actually better at it at this point in time. But you actually play the whole information warfare piece, as well as now you got space and cyber, as well as what you see on the ground, land forces, air forces in the air, and at sea with both above the sea and below the sea with the Navy.
Hey, Cyber Crusaders, thanks for watching that whole clip. We have much, much more of that, clearly, on our website. You can download the app as well and become a supporter and watch the whole darn thing.